Hello, my golf friends, and welcome back to Above Par. I hope you're having an amazing week and enjoying your January. Thank you for listening. So, today on this podcast, I have something a little bit different. I was a guest on the Wicked Smart podcast with Michael Leonard, and he interviewed me. And I want to share that episode here with you. If you're not familiar with Wicked Smart Golf, it's a podcast where Michael helps golfers shoot lower scores and drop their handicap without all the technical swing changes. He will teach you how to play more consistent golf by mastering your mindset, playing wicked smart golf on the course, and learning to practice like a pro and simplify the short game for lower scores. So make sure you check out Michael's podcast called Wicked Smart Golf. And I wanted to share with you my interview with him. So without further ado, here's my interview with Michael Leonard on the Wicked Smart podcast.
All right, Kathy. Well, thanks again for being a guest on Wicked Smart Golf. Very excited to cover the mental game with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I love talking about this topic, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was fun to really binge your podcast. And I heard you on our mutual friend Tori's podcast. And so knew that I had to have you on here because you have a really cool background. Not only as a player, you played very successfully as a junior, college, pro. Then you got into teaching the game and into the mental coaching. So you have done it all. That's why I was like, man, she can provide a lot of value to our listeners. And kind of wanted to go back in time a little bit. Like, when were you like, I love golf, I got to go all in on this? Was it something as a junior that was a no-brainer for your future?
No, not really. My dad was a golf pro. And so I wanted to hang out with my dad. And so I went to the golf course every day at 6 a.m. so I could hang with my dad all day. And I just played golf. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. So our season was pretty short. So during that time, I just, I went to the golf course. I spent every day that, it was decent weather to, as people joke, just the 4th of July, but there was more weather than that, nice weather than that. And I just hung out at the golf course, and then I kind of accidentally got good at it, and I like being good at things. So when I say accidentally, it wasn't like it was a passion of mine. I loved playing with the guys who worked in the shop, and I hung out, because there weren't very many girls who played. And then it just seemed like, well, you're pretty good. You should probably go try and play for college. And then I made a college team, and I did okay. And I could have done better. That was definitely the mental component at that time. But they're like, well, you've come this far, you might as well turn pro. And so I went and played on the European tour and the South African tour in Australia. And I played in lots of mini tours here in the States and went through tour school and all those things. And then, And so I did it. It wasn't a huge passion. I loved it, but I loved being around the golf community. And I think a lot of that had to do with that. My dad was a golf pro. And then of course my brother's a golf pro. My husband's a golf pro. So it's like, we got a lot of golf pros in the family. Yeah.
Wow. I want to have a family dinner with you guys. That sounds like
it's boring. It's like the poor people who are with us. It's like my dad is one of those guys that, can remember back in 1967 on hole number 1, and he'll give you a play-by-play shot by shot. And my brother and I are like, we can't remember the holes and the shots that we hit last week, let alone, that many years ago. So yeah, they can be kind of boring conversations.
I don't know. Anytime you're talking about golf, that's pretty cool too, to have it all in the family like that. That's a lot of fun, because my family love them to death, are not good golfers. So when I try and talk about, or they'll be out watching me and I'll hit a terrible shot, they're like, that was a good shot. I'm like, no, it wasn't like that. So they're just out there supporting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What was that like traveling all over the world too? I mean, that had to be fun, but obviously I know that mini tour life is really tough. What were some of your experiences like?
Well, besides the mini tours I played here, then I played the European tour, which, was their prime tour, for women at the time. And it's, so they're both different experiences playing overseas. Remember, I'm old enough to know when we didn't have cell phones. So I had to figure it out with maps and books and asking directions and learning some of the language in every country. It was a little different, but you didn't know what you didn't know at that time. Yeah. So I would never trade it for the world. I think what golf gave me as an experience, I wouldn't be able to travel the world and see what I saw had it not been for the game of golf. I'm super grateful for that. But I will say that I remember one year I packed my two suitcases in January, and I unpacked them in October, and I was exhausted. It was a long year, and that suitcase had been all over the world. And I needed a break, but yeah, it's not easy.
Didn't come home.
I did not come home, and I did not empty my suitcase. If I came home, I kept it packed because I wasn't home very long. But the thing is it's fun if you're playing well. It's not so fun if you're not playing well. If you're missing cuts and you're hanging around in another country over the weekend, waiting for to go to the next country, it's hard, and it's hard on your ego and your happiness. So you got to have a lot of mental skills in that department to keep yourself up if you're not playing well. If you're playing well, it's super fun. Right.
That is the epitome of golf right there, whether you're professional or an AM. So
for sure.
At what point were you like, okay, this is the grind wore me down. Like I'm going to have to transition into something else. And it sounds like you got into teaching, but was there a tournament that you remember, or was it just kind of like, I need a break?
It was money. It boiled down to, I did the math, and I was spending more money than I could make as a woman at the time, for sure, that I would have had to finish probably in the top 25 to even make just like net out decent revenue. And it was like, this is crazy. I'm pretty smart, so I was like, oh, I could probably make some money. I say that as I went into teaching, but I'm pretty smart, and I thought I could like make more money and maybe not having to travel so much. And then I met my husband, and I kind of then segued into teaching for the Nicholas Flick golf schools back in the day, and so and I just jumped right into teaching.
Awesome. What was like that? I mean, to be able to go from playing to the teaching side of things, like how was that? I feel like for me, I couldn't even give my girlfriend a lesson when we tried to go to the simulator a couple of weeks ago. That is just like not how I'm wired. So was that an easy transition for you because your dad was a golf pro, or did that take some time too?
No, it was actually very challenging because most golf pros know what they're doing, but they really don't know how to tell you what they're doing. So it's being able to put into words exactly what I would do to hit a chip or to hit a bunker shot. I just did it. My husband challenged me on that. He's like, well, tell me what you're doing with your chipping. I'm like, I just chip, but tell me, where is everything? I think kids are better at it and younger people are better at it now, but at the time I just did it. And so being able to put it into words and then being able to say it as many different ways as possible so that you could connect with the golfers, more quickly is the skill of a good teacher. Someone who's able to not just say things one way, but to say them many different ways is a really good teacher. The other thing that was really hard for me is I remember watching I used to think that, okay, this is not going to sound very nice. I have totally shifted from this, but I remember giving a lesson to a woman who couldn't hit it maybe but 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, something like that with her driver. And I looked at her like with a lot of empathy and almost pity. I was like, oh my gosh, this has to be so miserable. I just came off playing for a living. I'm like, I don't know. How does she enjoy the game? I felt so bad for her. And she hit one drive that she got up, in the air, and it went 60 yards. And I've never seen such joy on a person's face in my life. And I really had to pivot that enjoying the game of golf isn't about hitting perfect and pretty little shots. It's all relative for people. So I had to learn how to step into their shoes and understand that it's, that you don't have to hit it as far as I do to enjoy the game and get pleasure out of the game or score what I score. And I know that sounds kind of like, well, yeah, duh, but it was, a lot of it was like, I used to just think people must be so miserable to mishit the shot so many times.
Yeah, no,
but she was so happy. Yeah.
Isn't it funny? Yeah. She was probably happier than we've been sometimes when we're out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're never satisfied. Right. And I've never seen such joy in golf in my life. And I was like, you hit it 60 yards, you can't like really just even carry like a small crick, and she's like, this was the best shot ever. I was like, okay, like, this is cool. Like that you're bringing people joy.
That's a lesson for everyone listening too. Just, you got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy the good shots because there's going to be so many bad ones and you're going to want to quit sometimes and you go through slumps. But yeah, you got to kind of remember why you got started and just like hitting good shots and how rewarding that really is.
Right. And we all kind of started there. Like we forget that we started there, right? Not everybody as short as she hit it, but yeah. So
yeah,
anyway.
It's just, it's funny. Like you said, we're always just trying to get better, right? You break 100, then it's 90, then it's 80. It's just like it's a drug. You're just like trying to chase the next high, trying to, it's also expensive like a drug too.
Yeah.
But man, when it's good, it's good.
But it is legal and it's easy to find.
It is expensive though. It adds up. That's for sure, especially that tour life. What point were you like, I'm finding success with the coaching side of things, but got to start kind of incorporating the mental stuff? Because I think that that to me is like, there's this disconnect, right? You have people like us that try and work on the mental side, and then you have the swing coaches. And it sounds like you were trying to blend them together, which is great, because I feel like all but one coach I can think of has only been technical. And I've worked with probably 10 different people over 25 years. And when I really think about it, none of them talked about the mental game. So what point were you working with people and you're like, I got to start kind of injecting some of that mental stuff as well?
So I injected a lot of mental stuff into my teaching, though I really didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was just doing it from my standpoint and the way that I see things. I worked on some things personally in my life. I got a life coach, and I started really diving into this podcast called Life Coach School. Basically, I just dove all in, and I started practicing what she was talking about on the podcast in my day-to-day life. And then I got a coach, and then I started seeing some amazing shift and learned some skills that I decided to go and get certified. So I went through the whole process of getting certified. I coach people on any aspect of life. And it wasn't even thinking about golf until I went for a walk. My big thing that I talk about in my podcast all the time is that I struggled with my putting. I had some horrible thoughts about it. I've been to some very famous sports psychologists when I was playing, and they just helped me with a routine, or a drill or something, which was useful, but it didn't actually help me with how I beat the crap out of myself after a bad round. It didn't help me with the pressure I put on myself to putt. It didn't help me with how to get over that feeling of disappointment and shame that I was occurring while I was playing golf for a living. And I found that through this avenue that I was talking about. And I remember walking going, I wonder if I could apply this to golf. And it wasn't even a thing. I was helping people in a different way, and I just put it into the context, and I guinea pigged on myself, because you can use any topic. Like, I can coach people on anything using the kind of the formula that I use as far as managing your mind. And I turned my putting around in 10 days. That's not me playing every day either. Turned my putting around in 10 days, where people were saying, what did you do? Did you switch your putter? Did you change your stroke? And all I did was change a thought. And that was really what it was about. And when I realized this, if I had this when I was playing for a living, I would not have been sitting in my hotel room, kind of like sulking over missing a cut. I would have made more cuts. I would have had more fun. I would have made more putts. I would have shot lower scores, but I didn't have it. And I decided that I was going to dive all in and change how I helped people, from helping them with their swings and their grips and their posture and their aim, to helping them manage their minds and to play to their potential and take the talent that they have at that given moment in time out onto the golf course. So it shifted because I saw the results in myself, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. I saw the results in myself over something that I struggled with for 30 years, my whole life. And I thought it was just something that I was destined to have this struggle. I quit golf, actually, because I was like, golf's no fun if you can't make putts. So while I was raising kids, I used it as an opportunity to quit. And I played with students, I played in scrambles and stuff like that, but I really wasn't out there playing, and definitely wasn't having fun. So that's how I transitioned, is because I saw the impact of the way that I coach on my personal life, on the things that I actually went seeking it for. And then I applied it to golf, and I shifted everything really quickly in 10 days. And then I just decided that's how I can make a bigger impact on people's lives doing this.
That's amazing. I bet you still remember being on the putting green and being like, is this really happening? Like,
yeah, it was, you don't trust it. I was like, wait a minute, is this real? And so then I kept testing it. Yeah, it's awesome. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it funny how putting too, I guess not funny, but because I've been there as well. I've thrown a few putters in my day, but it's crazy how putting is so mental. It is so little you can just putt so many ways. You look at Jack versus Tiger versus Annika versus whoever. There's really no one way to do it. It's just so much up here. And so if you can figure that out there, I'm sure you started to apply that then to the short game and to the full swing.
Yeah.
And I really like in a lot of your podcasts, in that episode I listened to you on with our friend Tori, you just talk about the one brain, right? We have one brain, whether you're on the golf course or off the golf course. So can you kind of expand upon that? Because I really like that concept, and feel like a lot of people are really separating golf and life, when it seems like there is a lot of carryover, obviously.
Yeah, well, we do have one brain, right? How we process disappointment doesn't matter if we disappointed off the golf course or on the golf course. How we process anger, how we manage our thoughts, how we think intentionally on purpose, whether we believe in ourselves before we see results on or off the golf course, it doesn't matter. And I think a huge component of where I struggled, because I had a brother who played on the tour like right out of college for his whole life. And I was like, why can he do it and I can't do it? Like, what's wrong? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because it's innate? Is there something wrong with me that I don't have this golf brain? And that's why I don't like to call it mental game, because I don't think it's a game. It's just your brain. It's golf. Golf is like the way your mental golf is just how you manage your brain on the golf course, right? That's all it is. And you're doing the same things off of the golf course. The problem is that off of the golf course, we have time to avoid it. We have time, we can buffer over it, which means we can eat, we can have ice cream, we can drink. Not that you can't drink on the golf course. We can go to and watch TV and get on our phones, and we can hide in our room. We can do so many different things to avoid emotions or to not deal with things. You're stuck with it for 4 hours with the group that you're playing with in a container, and golf reveals yourself to yourself when you're out there playing. You can't avoid it. And the way that it shows up is in the results that you create. So being able to manage your mind is a life skill, and doing it on the golf course is just that life skill on speed is all it is. Cause you got to do it before you hit the next shot. And when you can learn the skill, when I work with clients, I encourage them, like, you got to practice it off the golf course. In the off season, this is your time to practice it. This is your time. And don't wait until you tee up and then try and figure out how to manage your mind. If you're screaming at people in the car and you're angry for 15 minutes while you're stuck in traffic, learn how to manage that right now, because you're going to take that onto the golf course. You're going to wonder why you're pissed off on the golf course. It's because you're pissed off screaming at people in the car, right? And so the same thing is if we're people pleasers. If you're a people pleaser off the golf course, you're a people pleaser on the golf course. If you're a perfectionist off the course, it's not like it goes away when you go on the golf course, right? If we have anxiety that we aren't very good at dealing with, it's going to happen out there. If we have chronic negativity, it's going to happen. If we're worried about what other people think off the course, we're going to definitely worry about what people think on the golf course. People tell me sometimes, like, no, I only do it on the course. I'm like, well, why then? I mean, if you know how not to do it, then why the heck would you volunteer to just do it on the course? I'm saying you're just not being intentional about it when you're off the golf course. So conversely, as I'm rambling on here, people have skills that they don't even recognize they have. I coach lawyers and doctors and successful CEOs and people who deal with, even moms who deal with just so much pressure and stress, and they're able to function at a high level and get great results. They're able to mentally pivot and use that to their advantage, where they can still think and perform. Figure out what you do well, because that's the same skill that you want to take out to the golf course. Figure out how to put it in the context of golf. And a lot of people already have the skill that they need to go out there and play to their potential. They just haven't really connected the two.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And it's funny how we always try and divide it and just think this is just me on the golf course. I look at when you gave that traffic example, that's one where I used to just be saying some pretty horrible things to drivers and still find myself every once in a while. And that would correlate to some negative self-talk on the golf course and outbursts and things like that. And so, yeah, I think that identifying who you are off is going to impact who you are on the course. So when people start working with you, you probably do you even start with the golf course, or do you just kind of start with their kind of overview with their life and figure out how that's translating?
Yeah, usually I talk about things on the golf course because that's where they come to see me. And usually it's easy to give me an example. And so we work through an example of something where that they're getting tripped up or they're getting in their own way. And I teach them a way to manage their mind, like a little formula that I have. It's called STEER. I talk about it in my podcast. And I have them start practicing that. And then I encourage them to practice it also off the course, because the more, just use any example. Sometimes I have kids, so it's dealing with school, or it might be something at work, or it could be just family. And, I teach them how to basically self-coach. Is that it? So you're going to self-coach on the course. You're going to self-coach off the course. And the more that you practice it off of the course, then it's easier to notice our tendencies when we're on the course. And, what I talk about is, in the simplest sense, for one to play to their potential is 2 simple steps. The first step is figuring out what state that you perform your best in, not Arizona, Texas, or Florida. It's what state, how do I feel when I play my best golf? And mostly when you can tap into a round that you just loved and you played really well. For most people, they're going to say, I was pretty calm, or they're going to say, I was pretty confident. And I call it the 3 C's. It's calm, certain, or confident, or a synonym of that. There are other states that work, like motivation and determination and hope. Those work. But if we really wanted to tap into one of them, it's one of the 3 C's. So you want to figure out what your preferred state is. And then your second step is to hit as many shots from there as possible. And it just becomes a project. So I have clients who have the inverse correlation between the higher that percentage of shots got, the lower their score went. And so when we start just paying attention, right? Awareness is our first tool. Let's pay attention. Like were you pissed when you swung? Were you feeling pressure? Were you stressed? What was it if you weren't calm, certain, or confident? And then let's learn how to manage that. And then you start saying to yourself, you come up to a shot, let's say, where because you've gone through some awareness exercises like this, you come up to a shot and there's 3 groups, let's say, on the next tee box. And you're like, this is the part of the story where I start thinking too much. Part of my story where I start thinking too much. I start thinking about my score. I get a little ahead of myself, and then I don't play so well going in. But now I'm prepared. I know that about me, and I have some things to do and say to myself. And that's just it. It's about just getting more aware of our own personal tendencies and trying to hit as many shots from calm, certain, and confident. Because when we're in one of those states, we can think clearly and we can swing freely. And if you can swing freely, you're going to be able to take the swings that you own, meaning the ones that you can do on the range, out to the golf course. If we're not thinking clearly, like if we're under stress or pressure or we're angry, we don't think clearly. We're in the back part of our brain. Right. And so then we make those AKA stupid mistakes. We don't, we're like, why did I swing there? Why did I hit it over there? What was I thinking, kind of thing? Or you start thinking about things that don't matter. And then when those emotions show up in our body, we're usually squeezing a little bit tighter. We might swing a little bit faster. We might come out of our posture or do some things that are our tendencies. That happens because there's extra tension in our body. We're not calm and relaxed. So our swing is trapped behind that emotion. And so the job is to get and move. It's not to not feel an emotion. You can have 7 emotions on one hole. The goal is like, I'm pissed off. I got 60 seconds to be pissed off before I go back into being calm before I hit this next shot. That's your job. Learn how to do that, and you're gonna be able to play to your potential.
Yeah, that is powerful. Do you have, because I actually was, writing down a few situations, and I survey my audience quite a bit and ask, what they're suffering with and struggling with. And it seemed one of the biggest ones is just getting angry, right? And it's just getting overly emotional, and it leads to a bad hole, a bad stretch of holes. So in that 60 seconds, what should people be thinking about to try and get back to calm or confident or whatever those one of those 3 C's were?
Okay, so frustration leads to anger, right? It usually starts as frustration. It leads to anger. And it comes from one of 2 main reasons. One is we have unmet expectations. So we have expectations that we're not meeting. And so I would always encourage people to first, let's get our expectations in check. Because if your expectations are unrealistic, for instance, you can't hit but 3 drives on the range, but you go out and think you should hit every fairway. Right. So that's an unrealistic expectation that a lot of people do. I had a client who was a lawyer. So saying that only because super smart woman, and she would get so pissed off if she didn't hit a 9-iron within 12 feet. Now, why 9-iron? Right? I don't know. I asked her why 9-iron. She's like, I don't know, 9-iron. Why 12 feet? I don't know. I'm like, that's better than a tour player, right? But there was just an unrealistic expectation. Plus, she was a 7 handicap, right? So it's not like she was a scratcher plus handicap golfer. So we want to make sure our expectations are in check. The other reason that we get super frustrated is that we have an injustice that was served. We were wronged in some way. Driving, this would be someone cut you off and slammed on the brakes, right? Somebody pickpocketed you. That would be where we'd have an injustice. In golf, that would be a bad break that should have bounced one way, bounced the other way and went in the water. Or our ball plugged in the face of the bunker, right? Then we get frustrated. What we want to do then is start noticing, are we arguing with reality? Because anytime we argue with reality, we lose, only every single time. So if you're arguing that your ball is buried in the face of a bunker, you can waste all the air you want arguing with it. Your ball's still buried in the freaking bunker. So it's your job then to stop arguing and pivot. So now the question is, what do I want to do about it? What do I want to think here? What's my next best move? You got to start asking yourself really powerful questions, and your brain will look for powerful answers. But when it comes to processing any emotion, whether it's anger or anxiety or stress, the first thing to do is acknowledge that I'm pissed right now. And that's not a problem. There's tools that I can tell, that you can do to process emotions, but you can also just negotiate with your brain and say, like, I'm going to bitch about this all I want when I finish 18 and go into the clubhouse. But right now, what do I need to do? And we got to learn that skill. The longer you're screaming at cars on the highway, chances are the longer you're going to be pissed off over a shot. Right. So practice on the highway, practice when you're like going, okay, that guy just pissed me off. I'm going to give myself 60 seconds to move past it. This is a great skill you all can practice so that you can transfer it out to the golf course.
Yeah. Wow. I love both those points. It's specifically the expectation management too, because I have a whole chapter in my book about that. Because when I really got into golf writing 5-6 years ago and started writing more and trying to get as good as I could, and I ended up going to Q school, and I'm trying to like figure out, what is good. And I start tracking my stats and doing all this stuff. And you start to realize all the great data that's on the PGA Tour and all these apps and stuff. And then you see that the average birdie putt's like 30 feet when they hit a green in regulation. It's like, wait a sec, these guys are the best players on tour and they only hit it 289 versus 335 all the time. And it's funny because I always say the PGA Tour is just a highlight reel, and we're just spoiled.
Yes.
And we're watching all these great shots, but we're not seeing the 3-putts, the missed 3-footer, and just all these boring shots. And I would like to see that just as much as the highlight reel, just to curb our expectations. Because we're
oh my gosh, like a blooper reel for the tour, right?
I'm calling it the low light reel, and I want it on ESPN 8.
ESPN Ocho. That would be so good, right? The best way for people to do that, which nobody wants to do for the most part, is go out and watch the guys who are barely making the cut and watch what they're doing, because they're still like, they're just having an off week. They're playing on the tour, but watch the misses that they have. They're going to be totally different than people that are on TV. To your point, is they're on TV because they're at the top of the board because they're having a great week. And so they're not missing a lot of shots. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And anytime I play a practice round for a tournament and I just get paired up with random people, and I'm always just observing, and I'll see that sometimes too. They'll hit a great shot and they'll have maybe 8-10 feet, and then they'll miss it and they'll beat themselves up and talk about it. And I don't mean it in like a sarcastic way, but I'm like, that the PGA Tour make rate from that's only 50%, and they try and fight it, and but I'm like,
right.
Maybe you're not going to make all those. Tiger's not going to make all those, so. And people sometimes take it the wrong way, I think, but when people get it, they're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot more sense, because anytime you're trying to force it, and like you said, you get disappointed, and that leads to anger and frustration. I just wish people could carry around an expectation management card, like, yep, I didn't hit every green in regulation. That's okay. No one does.
Yeah. And the thing too is that, being able to see how getting frustrated over missing an 8-footer that you can only, let's me back up. I tell my clients and anybody who's listening, do this. Go out to the range and hit 10 shots with each one of your clubs. If it's the putting green or short game area, go wherever it's appropriate for that club, and hit 10 shots, 10 because it's easy math, and figure out a snapshot of what your expectations are for this period of time. You can redo it in 2 weeks. You can redo it in a month. So for instance, if you went out and you hit drives between 2 imaginary flag sticks, and out of 10, you hit 5 in between the flag sticks, that was the width of a fairway, then your expectation for the day, if you managed your mind really well, because typically on the range, we're pretty calm, certain, and confident. We're relaxed. We're not like we don't have danger out there like water and out of bounds and people. So, and scores, right? So if you managed your mind well, you can expect to hit 50% of the fairways, which is 7. So when you miss a fairway, then you're like going, oh yeah, I'm going to miss a fairway. I'm going to miss one out of every other fairway. I hope I don't miss it horribly on the ones that I miss. I mean, that's golf. It's the same thing with putts and bunker shots. If you can only get out of the bunker 5 out of 10 times, I'm doing 50% again, but because it's easy, but then every other bunker shot, you should be able to get up and down. But we get in our own way when we sit there and get pissed off that we didn't get out of the bunker. or that we didn't hit every fairway. And if it serves you, this is the question I always tell people, if it serves you to be pissed off, if it serves you and helps your game, knock yourself out. But if it doesn't serve you, then why are you doing it? I mean, it's as simple as that, because we have the option to think whatever the heck we want. Why are you thinking that you should be better than you are?
Yeah, I love it. Quit arguing against reality too. That was a fun one. I like that a lot, because I had a plugged bunker shot on the 18th hole on the last day of a tournament. And I had played so bad, I was kind of already defeated at that point. And I just kind of laughed. I just go in there and hit it.
Right. And that's a stat we don't know very well, like how many times we can get out of a plugged bunker lie and predict the roll and how far it flies. Like, I mean, same thing with the ball out in the rough. Like, we get ticked off because we don't know how much grass is going to get between the ball and the club face, or if we're going to get a flyer or a knuckleball. Like, there's things that aren't predictable, but yet we get pissed off at the results. And it's about what's going to serve me best for my next self to swing over the golf ball. And that's, that's the job when we're out there. It's just the person who can do that the best is the person who's going to take the most talent out there.
Love that. And I know you've played a ton of tournaments and you coach a ton of players that are obviously professionals and playing in the highest level tournaments. Why is tournament golf so much harder for the everyday golfer? Like, what is it that makes these so much harder? And what are some things that we can do? Because I got a lot of people that are like, I would love to get into a men's league or a women's league or start doing status events, but I'm too nervous or I just don't think I'm good enough. What makes tournament golf so hard?
We make it matter. I mean, that's basically it. If you go out and play at a practice round, I coach people on this all the time. I play so well in my practice rounds or with my buddies, but then I go play in a tournament and like a different person shows up. So the question is why? And like, well, I'm nervous. Why? Well, because I don't want to play bad. Why? Right. Everything we do and don't do is based on how we get to feel, right? It's about how you're going to treat yourself at 18. It's what's waiting for you when you turn in your scorecard from you. That is what makes it matter. So if the more that you're going to punish yourself at the end of the round, the more your score matters. Like most people aren't playing golf like I play golf for a living, so my income mattered, right? So it's like that's a whole different animal. But when you're playing amateur golf or you're just playing in USGA events or you're trying to qualify, the bigger of a deal you make your result, the bigger of a deal you make it, whether you qualify or don't qualify, you freak your brain out. Your brain thinks it's a big saber-toothed tiger and it's trying to protect you. So it puts you on high alert. You go into this fight or flight thing. And next thing you know, you can't think clearly. You're making stupid mistakes. You're all tense. Your tempo's off. You're wondering what happened to you. It's because your brain's like saying, we need to get in the cave and stay safe and go home and not put ourselves out here. Because at the end of 18, you might die. I mean, this is what we do to our brain, but when we sit there and say, it's not a tiger. Okay, brain, I'm okay. And I don't make my results mean anything about me. If you can have your own back at the end of 18, it's like we can want to achieve things, but we got to understand that the more that I need to achieve something to feel good, the less likely you are going to be able to achieve it.
Yeah, I had a coach one time say, you are not your score. And I think that's one I've always enjoyed. Sometimes I need to remind myself as well. But yeah, because he's like, you can't, it's different. Just because you have a good day doesn't mean you can be in a good mood. You have a bad day, you can be in a bad mood. And obviously tournament golf tends to bring out higher scores sometimes and a lot of pressure. And one of the things too, I feel like I keep hearing a lot, and I've experienced this earlier on in my career, is it's dealing with bad playing partners or worrying about the opinion of others. How can people kind of combat like dealing with strangers? Because, a lot of times you go from playing with your friends or family, and then all of a sudden you sign up for a tournament and now you're with totally random people. Some might be really good and some might be really bad. Some might be assholes. There's a couple I can think of. Some might be great people. So it's like, what's your strategy for people that are trying to figure out like, how do I deal with playing with new people and still play my own game?
Okay, so there are assholes in the planet. There are assholes who play golf, right? There's people who cheat. There's people who play slow. There's people who are loud. There's like, we're arguing with reality that these people exist. It's kind of like, I'm going to go back to the car analogy. I had a dad who had road rage. So I use this analogy all the time. I'm like, why are you screaming at this guy? And for as long as you've been screaming at this guy, there's always guys on the road that cut you off. So it's futile. Like, so one of the things is why are we surprised that people drive stupid like that cut in and out of traffic, that cut us off, that tailgate, that do all the things that put us at risk. And every day we're surprised that they show up. Like we're trying to teach everybody a lesson out there. So same thing with golf. We shouldn't be surprised that there are assholes that we have to deal with. Our job is to then stay and not, the job is to not have the sentence, if they weren't doing this, I would be able to think clearly and I'd be able to focus and I'd be able to, swing and enjoy my round. If they weren't chewing gum, if they weren't smoking in the cart, playing music, if they weren't, playing slowly, I could manage my mind. Right. So we have these rules. I call it a rule book that we have for people. Basically, you could stand on the first tee and you can go like, listen, okay, this is what I need you to do. Okay. Everybody listening, I need you to say no more than 7 words a minute. Any more than 7 words, I get a little anxious, right? If you walk ahead of me, it's going to piss me off. I don't want to be pissed off today. If you play too slow, I'm going to be annoyed. So I need you to keep up the pace of play. I'm going to give you this many shots per minute. Like if we have this rule, right, we go through all the rules that we might possibly have, then we can say that if you all do that, then I can have a quiet brain and manage my mind. Is everybody good with that? Right. The people will go like F off, like, because I have my own rules too, like what I think is right and how I can manage my mind. So when we can give people, the problem isn't that people do the things. The problem is that we wish they didn't so that we could manage our mind. And so the skill is to learn to manage your mind. And then you could bring on the assholes. I can play with the assholes, bring on the people who I can, like, it's like not a problem. Do I want to do it? Maybe not, but I can manage my mind around that. Right. Worrying about what other people think, right, is basically is what I would encourage people to do is to project into their heads what you think they're thinking.
Okay.
Right. When we worry about what people are thinking, let's say I'm worried they think I'm going to suck. It's the reason that you think they're going to think that you suck is because you think you suck. Right. It's going to reveal to you your thoughts about yourself. You probably don't project into other people's brains. I'm wondering if they think I look too good in these pants. Like, I'm wondering if they think that my swing is too nice. Like, we're not worried about that, right? Because, well, we might be, but it's usually because it's not a thought that we have in our head. So we don't project it into other people's heads, right? But we project into their heads the things that we worry about are the thoughts that we say about ourselves. That's why they're there. So your work is to clean up those thoughts, start changing the dialogue about yourself, because the better your dialogue is about yourself, the less you worry about what other people are thinking, because it doesn't matter.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. Just kind of flip that. And I feel like, is that probably one of those things too, where you feel like if you're worried about what people think about you on the golf course, you're probably worried about that in your personal life?
100%. Like, why would you, like, if you worry about what other people think off the golf course too, like, why would you just go to the golf course and start worrying about it? Because you would have exactly what I just said. You'd have that attitude about what people think about you off of the golf course. You'd carry that on to the course, right? But if it really comes from a little bit of an insecurity, like it's just a dialogue about ourselves, what other people think. Now, we fight against our own natural tendency to want to be included and liked. We don't want to be rejected. We're really tribal in nature, so we don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. Chances are you hitting a crappy golf shot is not going to get you kicked out of the tribe, right? And people are worried more about that I hit a crappy shot and I wonder what they think about me, right? And the thoughts that you think are just really your own thoughts because you're saying that to yourself.
And is that like again, kind of just our brains outdated and we're still thinking if we get kicked out, we're going to get eaten. And so that's why we're always trying to.
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, if we're not in the tribe, we're exposed to all the elements. Like, we need the tribe to help protect us. So it is when you realize what's happening, it's kind of like you can start, like, I call it negotiating with your brain. Like, okay, brain, I'm not in danger here. I'm not going to get kicked out of the tribe. We can calm down. Everything's fine. Right. So, yes, that's exactly it. It's a prehistoric primal part of our brain that just feels like that's why we naturally worry about what other people think. And we have some judgment issues because when we judge, it helps us make sure that we won't get kicked out of the tribe. Like, we don't want to be the outlier for the most part, because that means that, we're not fitting in and we need that protection, but we don't, right? Especially on the golf course.
Yeah. It's just so funny how we're still operating from this prehistoric device and still trying to turn it into anything, into business and playing good golf. Yeah. It's like this thing is still very primitive. And so you got to kind of, that's why the mental game, or I guess we won't call it the mental game. What do you call it then if it's not the mental game?
I just call it mental golf, because that's why the people talk about it. But I think it's golf. It's mental management. It's managing your mind. So the game to me, the game, that's all we called it, was mental game when I was playing for a living. So I felt like it was a game that I didn't know how to play. And it was, or a game that I didn't have. And so, or it felt like it was just isolated to golf. So that's why I like to separate it out just a little bit and know that it's not a game. It's semantics to me, but I think it is just about being able to, I like to make it more of a life thing. It's the one brain thing, and learn how to manage your mind everywhere. And when you can manage your mind everywhere, it just becomes so much easier on the golf course.
Yeah, makes so much sense. And obviously you've played at the highest level, you coach at the highest level. Do you find that there's like one or two defining things that the best of the best do that the like scratch golfer just isn't doing in terms of mental game or mental golf?
That like a scratch or an advanced golfer is doing.
Just say maybe even someone that's like you think is a good AM, or maybe you're going to qualify for a USGA event, but then you see the best of the best players. Is there anything that you're like, man, if they could just adopt XYZ from the pros, it would have a tremendous impact on their game?
I think the biggest thing is the believing in themselves without seeing the results. I think a lot of higher handicappers believe that they can't be confident, or they can't feel like they can play the game at a certain level until they see it. And so confidence is one of those things that doesn't come with hitting good golf shots. Confidence doesn't come with having a low handicap or a low score. Confidence comes with the dialogue that you say to yourself in your head about yourself. And that's available to anybody. So I think a lot of people feel like, well, I'm not a good enough golfer to be confident, is something that gets in their way. And so they got to start believing in themselves before they see that happen. I also think that amateurs, and this isn't necessarily mental, but a little bit, is they underestimate how much work that takes mentally and physically to play at a top level. They don't realize that, that they're one practice session a month, or that they just, they should be able to work on, should be able to think a certain way on the, relative to the game of golf that should get it done, and how much work goes into playing at a top level. I think that's something that people misunderstand. But I will say the one thing that is across the board that I coach people on is, whether it's you're a high handicap or a professional golfer, is worrying about what other people think, believe it or not. Even at the top level, golfers, they worry about what people think. Managing, focusing on results, managing that, like focusing on your score and managing your brain going there and not getting ahead of yourself, and pressure, putting pressure on yourself to make putts, whether it's even at like a 40 handicapper playing in a scramble for their partners, or whether it's a tour player trying to put pressure on themselves to make birdies. This is like the biggest thing that's like so fascinating to me. On like, I need to make some birdies, and it usually backfires, right, when we try and do that. So those are like the big things that it doesn't matter what your handicap is. That's what the human brain does, just across the board.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You even heard like Max Homa talk about it. Just like, I needed to believe in myself. It's like, how can that person that's that good, we watch all the time, playing, Presidents, Ryder Cups, and they're still worrying about that. So yeah, it's definitely, if it's there for him, it's definitely gonna be there for me and any other golfer.
Yes. Yeah. I have an academy, that where we just talk about things on a monthly basis. But one of my clients, she's 80, and I love her. And I had awesome. Yeah, it's awesome. I have a couple clients in their 80s, and I love that, right? They're still trying to work on their game, and they're working on their brain, and they want to feel better and think better. And I had a tour player on as a guest, and she was, and actually I take that back. It might have been, I have another client who's like a plus something handicap, and he was on a call, and he said that he just lost some confidence, and she was blown away. She said, he's a +2 or +3 handicap. How can he not have confidence? She just assumed that I would instantly have confidence. And once I had a certain number on the scorecard, or I had a certain number handicap. And it really was hard for her to get her head around. So that confidence is something that we have to work on all the time. Believing in ourselves is something that we have to work on. Even it doesn't matter where we are. It's just relative to where our game is. Yeah. And just like you said with Max Homa, right? We have human brains. Our brains work against us. Our brains are always trying to tell us how we're effing up and like how everything can go wrong and that how we might get eaten alive by a saber-toothed tiger. And if we don't do it deliberately and like think intentionally, that little voice wins.
Yeah, that's the saber-tooth tiger is always a good example. Speaking of your coaching too, before we get into the last question, tell us a little bit more about how you're helping people, what kind of golfers you help with, and any other details.
Yeah, so I help people. I coach people privately for one-on-one, and that's one avenue to work with me. I coach anywhere from 40 handicaps to tour players. The criteria to working with me is if your golf is a big part of your life and you're not happy. Like if you're living in a golf community even, and then you're playing golf every day and you're miserable, that's worth talking about, right? Like on managing your mind around that. The other reason is that if you're just getting in your own way, if you're hitting better shots on the range than you can take out to the golf course and you're not managing your mind very well and golf matters to you, then, that's another reason to work with me or to work on this part of your game. That's one way. I have some digital programs where basically what I teach people on privately, I just put into a digital format and people can do it self-paced. And then I have my academy, which is like, I just coach people in a group setting live. They bring questions on and we talk about different topics relative. It's called the Above Par Academy. It's going to change after the first of the year, but it's basically an extension of my podcast. We talk about topics on the podcast and people can come on and ask questions and get coached in more of a group setting. So it's more economical than private coaching.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it's great to have different offerings. And if you can send me the links, I'll make sure and include them, anything for more information in the show notes when this goes live.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. And for my last question, we got the off season here for a lot of people. I just had a student who's in New York and he's got 4 months of no golf. So what is some things we can do for the mental side in the off season? Because I feel like everyone's thinking about indoor simulators and doing all this stuff, but I know there's a lot we can do. Do you have any one to two exercises you recommend people engage in to help the mindset this off season?
Yeah. So I would practice, just like I said, managing your mind. I talked about traffic, like find any scenarios. If you find that you have something that is a little bit of a red flag for you, whether it's frustration or it might be anxiety or pressure, find different situations where you can practice just deliberately and being intentional about shifting, giving yourself 60 seconds to move into a place of being calm or certain and confident. You don't have to do it necessarily for that scenario. Do it just imagining that you were doing it for the golf course and practice that. The more you do that and the more you see evidence that you can do it and that you can shift, then when you go on to the golf course, right, you're going to trust yourself to be able to do that. So I practice on anything. Like I said, you have one brain. So do that as often as you can. The other thing that I would tell people to do is start being aware of the words that you say to yourself on a daily basis. Start paying attention to the negative thoughts that you're saying. Start paying attention to how you treat yourself and you talk about yourself, because the words that you say matter. Every single word matters that you hear in your brain. And we get to pick, you're going to have crappy thoughts. And I describe it like watching luggage on a baggage claim, right? You're going to have all these different types of baggage, and some you're going to want to pull off and some you're going to want to let go by. That's fine. So you want to be the observer of them and then just be really intentional about the ones that you're going to decide to think about yourself, because your thoughts create your emotions and how you feel. And really everything that we care about is how we get to feel. So practice listening to and minimizing the negative dialogue in your head so that when you go to the golf course, you're going to have less of that, because that's a big thing that affects a lot of people. Are just those negative Nellies out there get in the way.
Change your self-talk, change your life. I love it.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. Anytime you want to do a guest interview, you're always welcome on Wicked Smart Golf. I know you got tons of knowledge up there, and we appreciate you sharing it all with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview with Kathy. I know I did. I think she has a great approach to really understanding how the brain can help you both on and off the golf course. And I really challenge you guys this year to figure out different ways and different strategies to take your mental side of the game to the next level, because I know you can, and I know that it will have a significant impact both on your golf and outside in your life as well. So Make sure to check out the links below if you want to learn more about working with Kathy. And I highly recommend you listen to her podcast, Above Par. It is a great podcast to give you a ton of wisdom to understand your brain better so you can think and play and hopefully have a lot more fun on the golf course.